Okay, welcome to Global History Lesson on Government, and more specifically, what is the purpose and what is the role of government. This is a topic that has been debated by people in society basically since the beginning of time, and it continues to be the topic of conversation all over the world. Bear with me, it might not be as exciting as you want it to be, but it will be fairly informative. So I'm just going to start with three characters that have discussed political philosophy and the role of government. The first is Plato, when he wrote The Republic about 2,300 years ago. In it, he talked about the concept of justice, and then he discussed a number of different political structures, all of which essentially lead to corruption and tyranny. Next was Machiavelli, who wrote The Prince. This was around the 16th century, 17th century, and he talked about the role of a leader and how government should rule its people. So a very influential piece of work. Finally, and for the purpose of this lesson, is Thomas Hobbes, who wrote Leviathan. He wrote it during the English Civil War, again during the 17th century, and it was a time when people were unhappy with essentially absolute monarchy. So Hobbes writes Leviathan during the English Civil War. This was a war where people generally were unhappy with absolute monarchy and not having any say in how their lives were run, either social, political, or economic. So in Leviathan, he talks about the rights of man and also the responsibility of government. He begins by talking about man in a state of nature, and this is to say basically what was man like before civilization or civilized man. In a state of nature, Hobbes, talks about how all men are born equal in mind and body, and they're born free. And so, with that, although we like to think it's great because this is what we preach in school and what parents tell their children, freedom and equality come with, what Hobbes says, a pretty hefty price. So Hobbes takes a pretty interesting spin, on man in a state of nature. The fact that people are born free and born equal in mind and body. He goes on to discuss the fact that, in the state of nature, life would actually be, pretty brutal and cutthroat for man. I don't think it's any secret that man is naturally self-interested. I mean, we see that all the time in society today. But in a natural state, that is a life and death thing. So Hobbes says that in a state of nature, man does what he needs to do to survive, and regardless of whether or not other people are hurt or other people die. He talks about it being nasty, brutish, and short, and the fact that people would be in a constant state of conflict, which I think, we see examples of all the time in real life. So I was trying to think of an example of this, and I was thinking about the Hollywood movie The Purge, where for one night a year, I think, there is no laws, and government essentially is at a standstill. And that one night a year is chaos. People lock themselves in their homes. They've got their panic rooms and everything else because it's a state where people are self-interested and do what they need to do to get ahead, or just to cause hurt and anguish. So Thomas Hobbes believed that life in a state of nature was not a life worth living, and so he believed that there should be a governing body. He was actually for a government that is run by the people through elected officials, and he was quick to point out that there should be different bodies of government that work together so nobody holds too much power. For man, Hobbes talks about a social contract that men enter into, with a governing body in order to protect themselves and to protect their freedoms. And essentially what this means is they give up some of their personal freedom, that freedom that we're born with. They give it up to the government to make decisions in our best interest. So we live civilized lives, free from harm. And that, essentially is why government is important. What is the role of government? So, there are many political philosophers that would take different directions. I chose Hobbes because he's relevant to the way government is run in Canada, the United States, and, many countries today. And, he's a pretty important figure. Now, how government is run is for you guys to find out through lesson activities. So, thanks for watching. Thank you for watching the video. If you need clarification, just rewatch and rewind. This was why government is important. We'll talk about the roles and responsibilities of government, as a class later on.